I knew something was off the moment Leon didn't reply to my 8:17 a.m. Slack message. That just didn't happen. He was never late, never distracted, never anything short of surgically precise. Leon ran like a Swiss watch and showed about as much emotion as a brick wall, which at Nexra meant most people forgot he was even human. I used to joke that if he died at his desk, it would take 6 weeks and a full-blown server collapse before anyone noticed. Turns out I was wrong. Took 1 week. And about half the platform bursting into flames. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind. Leon Porter, back-end engineer, 41 years old. He looked like a guy who lived on black coffee, drank it from some ancient NASA mug, and read Linux forums for fun. No Twitter. No personal brand. No jokes in Slack. Just Leon, his code, and a faded rubber wristband that read, "Stability over hype." He wasn't loud. Never showed up to happy hour Zooms. Never flexed in meetings. Honestly, half the new hires assumed he was some leftover contractor nobody had bothered to offboard. They'd ask me, "So what does Leon actually do?" And I'd laugh. Not because it was funny, but because not knowing was borderline suicidal. Leon didn't write code. Leon engineered silence. The kind that made dashboards boring, weekends peaceful, and investors sleep at night. You never noticed his work because it just worked. Always. The data sync engine? Leon. The uptime failovers that made us look like tech gods during Black Friday traffic spikes? Also Leon. The reason client activity reports stayed lightning fast while half the country was snowed in, and the other half was panic buying junk at 4 in the morning? Yep. Him again. He was the invisible net beneath a very stupid circus. Then the new CTO showed up. Alec. Mr. Move Fast, Break Better. He didn't see value in quiet systems. He saw dead weight. Hey, quick pause while we're heading straight into the guts of this mess. If you're listening, tap like and hit subscribe. It lets the team know we're not just talking into the void. 97% of people listen without subscribing, but if you're still here, you're clearly one of us. That support keeps stories like this coming. Thanks. Now back to Leon. You could feel the change the moment Alec took over. Overnight, metrics mattered more than mechanics. Flash replaced foundation. In his first week, he called an all-hands and said, "If you can't measure it in engagement, it doesn't matter." Leon glanced at me. Didn't say a word. But I could tell his mind was already packing its bags. 2 weeks later, Alec gave a big speech about sunsetting redundant legacy systems. Translation: fire the people who make me feel stupid. And Leon made him feel very stupid. In one meeting, Leon calmly offered to walk the team through the rollback protocol in case we ever hit a multi-region sync failure. Alec waved him off like a janitor giving plumbing advice. I remember his exact words. "Thanks, but no one's going to notice if we swap out some back-end folks. You guys are like duct tape. Necessary but replaceable." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Leon didn't react at all. He nodded once, wrote something in his notebook, then walked out with that same slow, almost monk-like calm that made him impossible to read. No anger. No argument. No passive-aggressive tweet storm. That was the worst part, watching the guy who quietly held the company together get treated like an outdated plugin, and then appeared to accept it. But he didn't. Not really. See, Leon was a lot of things. Quiet. Careful. Maybe even a little bitter, the way people get when they know their value and watch it get ignored. But more than anything, Leon was prepared. For years, he'd layered the system with silent checks and undocumented protocols. Not out of spite, Leon wasn't wired that way, but because he believed in fail-safes. In control. He believed in locking chaos behind 27 separate contingency gates. He never expected anyone else to maintain them. Just him. And he knew exactly what would happen if someone else tried. So when Alec finally laid him off during the Q3 strategic reorg, Leon didn't argue. He didn't delete files. Didn't leave some sarcastic landmine buried in the code. He packed one manila envelope, gave a small nod to the HR rep, and walked out like it was any normal Wednesday. He wasn't angry. He was done. And Nexra? Nexra was about to learn what really happens when the duct tape stands up and walks away. Ever watch a man get professionally gutted in under 5 minutes? All smiles and PowerPoint slides? That was the meeting where Alec Darien made it crystal clear who mattered at Nexra, and who didn't. freshly poached from some VC-soaked fintech startup that burned hot and died stupid. Alec strutted in like Moses coming down from Mount Disruption. Buzzwords ready. Teeth blindingly white. Zero respect for anything older than his gym shorts. He renamed departments before he bothered learning people's names. Reorganized teams with the delicacy of a bar fight. And when his eyes finally landed on Leon, he didn't see a quiet architect holding the platform's spine together. He saw legacy bloat. That was the exact phrase. Legacy bloat. Like Leon was digital cholesterol. The meeting was supposed to be a roadmap alignment. Cross-functional updates. Core infrastructure reviews. All that corporate noise. Leon had actually prepared a full deck, his first presentation in maybe 4 years. I'd seen him the night before, standing alone in the break room, muttering through bullet points, polishing every slide like it was a precious stone. This was his one chance to explain the mess of undocumented systems and what would happen if someone pulled the wrong thread. He wasn't chasing praise. He just wanted awareness. Alec didn't even let him plug in. "No offense, Leon," he said, clicking through his own slides full of pastel circles and strategy icons. "But this isn't really the time to dig into code fossils. We're focused on moving forward." Leon didn't move. Chin tucked. Clicker frozen in his hand. Then Alec turned to the room, flashing a grin like a quarterback at homecoming, and said it out loud. "Honestly, we've got smart people here, real forward thinkers. No one's going to notice if a couple back-end guys slip through the cracks. That's the beauty of modularization." Some people laughed. Not everyone, but enough. I watched Leon's face. Nothing changed. Not a twitch. Still, I swear I could hear the heavy steel door of his patience grinding shut. He didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. He closed his laptop, placed the unused USB drive beside his water cup, and leaned back like this was exactly what he'd been waiting for since the day Alec swaggered through the front doors. And the worst part? He was right. Because Alec didn't just brush Leon aside. He turned it into policy. Within a week, he rolled out something called Operation Fresh Stack. The goal was to sunset fragile, undocumented legacy dependencies and build future-ready teams. If you spoke fluent corporate passive-aggressive, it meant one thing: fire anyone I don't understand. Leon's name sat right at the top of that list. Alec started pulling younger devs into side meetings, asking pointed questions about process opacity and team scalability. He never said Leon's name, but it hung in the room like battery acid. And these kids, fresh out of boot camps, still drunk on startup Kool-Aid, nodded along like loyal recruits. They had no idea the API wrapper they relied on every single day to fake load balancing across regions was written by the same guy Alec was actively ignoring in sprint meetings. Meanwhile, Leon kept showing up, kept writing code. He kept cleaning up the messes Alec's forward thinkers made every time they tried to patch over his infrastructure. Leon would leave polite comments in the pull requests. "This function is rate limited based on LP failover conditions. See internal doc 2019 for details." Nobody ever bothered to read them. They just merged and moved on. One Friday night, when we were the last two left in the office, I asked him why he didn't just push back. He sipped his cold coffee, eyes glued to the terminal, and said, "You can't make someone see architecture if they think they're living in a pop-up tent." The next week, he submitted a formal request to present the core systems roadmap during Q3 planning. Denied. Alex scribbled a note on the approval form. Too granular. Not strategic leadership material. That's when Leon stopped asking. But don't mistake his silence for surrender. He didn't check out. He started counting. Which scripts were running without fallback logic. Which update cycles were bypassing system health checks. Which parts of his code were being copied, rewritten, and broken by people who thought ref actor meant delete the warning labels. He didn't say it out loud, but I knew. Leon was documenting the real roadmap now, and it didn't include Nexera. It all went down on a Thursday, which felt strangely fitting, too far from Monday to protest, too close to Friday for anyone to care. The whole floor reeked of box tie from some lingering lunch and the thick, desperate atmosphere everyone else was breathing in. I was on a metrics alignment call when I saw Leon pass by the glass-walled conference room. An HR rep trailed behind him like a mall cop who'd lost the will to chase. No security escort. No shouting. Just that slow, painful walk people do when they're still processing the insult, their brain lagging behind the sting. By the time I got back to my desk, his name was grayed out in Slack. Just a cold line of pixels beneath his profile. Last active 10:03 a.m. I don't know why, but that timestamp hit me harder than any goodbye ever could. Apparently, they called him into a quick check-in that morning. No warning. No pre-meeting. Just an ambush in HR with a legal observer and a beige folder already printed with his name. When Leon sat down, Alec was already there. Legs crossed. Elbow resting on the back of the guest chair. Looking like it was just another quarterly review and not a pre-dug grave. "We're letting you go," Alex said. No warmth. No hesitation. Just cold, efficient human offloading. HR slid him the exit packet like it was a menu. Inside was a generic thank you card, printed with appreciation, in a font so bland it almost apologized for existing. No signature. No personal note. Just factory ink and empty sentiment. Leon turned it over. Flipped through the packet. Never blinked. Alec leaned forward, clearly enjoying the sound of his own dismissal, and said, "You'll land somewhere. Eventually. But we're moving toward a more agile model. You understand?" Leon nodded once. Didn't argue. Didn't ask why. Didn't mention that he'd single-handedly stabilized the Q1 client load surge that saved our renewal rate. Didn't remind anyone that his fail-safes had prevented a full system outage last month, when some shiny new hire typed a load balancer path into oblivion. He just grabbed his bag, the same beat-up canvas one frayed at the strap, stitched like someone who didn't trust the world not to fall apart at the seams. He pulled out a sealed manila envelope, thick, labeled in his handwriting, "Elpunderfer, internal only." That was it. No flash drive. No vengeance. Just one envelope. Inside the envelope, I would later learn, was the only copy of Leon's systems documentation, written entirely in a notation only he understood. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't hostile. Just foreign. The kind of thing that didn't just require reading but understanding. And Alec? Alec didn't understand a thing. As Leon stood to leave, Alec tried one last smirk. That smug, oily grin people wear when they're too dumb to realize they're holding a grenade with the pin halfway out. "You know, no offense," Alec said, adjusting his cufflink, "but no one really noticed what you did here." Leon turned his head, just enough to meet his eyes. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't sneer. He just said, calm as a pastor at a funeral, "That's the point." Then he walked out. No goodbyes. No locker to clean out. No farewell email or department Slack message. Just a quiet exit, one slow step at a time, down a hallway filled with people too busy refreshing dashboards to realize the reason those dashboards even loaded was leaving the building. I didn't see him again after that. Not at first. But the thing about invisible people, when they vanish, the silence they leave behind gets deafening. Day 7. That's how long it took. 7 days after Leon walked out the front doors without a word, our dashboard started bleeding red like a Christmas tree in cardiac arrest. First it was subtle. A minor alert on the East Coast load balancer. One of the DevOps guys shrugged it off, called it an anomaly blip. By noon, it had escalated into a 503 storm across 2 data centers. By 3 p.m. our auto-scaling logic, normally as smooth as silk, refused to trigger under stress. We were flying blind into a full-blown cluster stall, and no one knew why. Clients started hitting support with questions like, "Why are my scheduled data exports reverting to last week's version?" And, "Is your uptime guarantee still valid?" That's when Alex strolled in with his Red Bull and bravado, took one look at the chaos on the traffic monitor, and asked the most Alec question imaginable. "Has anyone checked the legacy junk Leon built?" He actually said, "junk," while the system choked on its own traffic and rolled back an entire sync job for our biggest retail client. Alex stood there like a clueless chef yelling at the stove for burning water. I wanted to scream. Here's what really happened. Leon's code wasn't just the back end. It was the glue holding everything together. He didn't just write modules, he built behavioral guardrails. Little logic nests that only kicked in when things started to go sideways. Silent rerouting systems. Recursive fallback paths. Predictive scaling triggers that adapted to abnormal latency spikes. The kind of stuff you don't realize is working until it's gone. And guess what? It was gone. Not because Leon deleted it, he didn't. But because the modernization team, Alec's army of weekend certificate architects, had started swapping out modules without understanding the dependencies. They'd overwritten 2 core scheduling scripts and stubbed out a dynamic cache invalidation job that Leon had wrapped in a wrapper, like a Russian nesting doll of foresight. Now that wrapper was rejecting data pushes with obscure flags like and no documentation, no comments, just deeply intentional code that assumed correctly that only one person ever needed to understand it. And that person was gone. Alec refused to believe it was the system fighting back. "It's just technical debt," he barked at the war room. "We're paying the price for old code nobody cleaned up." But the engineers weren't so sure. I could see it in their eyes. They weren't loyal to Leon necessarily, they just knew better. They cracked open his modules, trying to trace why the traffic reroute logic was splitting a single inbound query across 3 dead endpoints. What they found wasn't rot. It was architecture. Protective, responsive, adaptive logic. Code that wasn't written to fail, it was written to warn. And now it was screaming. We lost 2 clients that day. Not massive ones, but loud enough to shake the sales floor. A few of us tried to quietly escalate. One engineer uncovered a subroutine tagged LP_safe, a legacy flag that, when removed, caused the system to bypass sync verification entirely and wipe out half a backup. We brought it straight to Alec. He didn't even hesitate. "Strip out anything with LP in the tag. That stuff isn't scalable. We're rebuilding everything anyway." I swear the temperature in that room dropped 10 degrees. Someone joked later that the only thing keeping Nexera afloat was the ghost of Leon's paranoia. But it wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. And Alec had just fired the only guy who knew how to keep that ghost fed. That night, the call center exploded. One of our Tier 1 enterprise clients, a law firm with zero tolerance for data delays, called in furious about missing billing records. Alec, sweating through his Patagonia vest, told them we'd patch it in post. They didn't find that funny. A few hours later, I spotted Alec pacing outside in the dark, phone pressed to his ear, muttering, "No, it's not catastrophic. It's just inherited complexity." His hand was shaking. He'd never admit it, but the cracks were spreading fast. And under the floorboard sat Leon's quiet genius, abandoned and responding exactly the way it was designed to, by rejecting the unworthy. I watched the monitor flash failed again and again. For the first time, I didn't feel panic. I felt something close to justice. The breakthrough came during a 2 a.m. triage call that should have been a code review but felt more like an archaeological dig. The DevOps team had been pulling 12-hour shifts, trying to hold the platform together with metaphorical chewing gum and pure exhaustion, when Junior, our newest SRE hire, fresh out of a cloud cert boot camp, mumbled the phrase that cracked everything open. "Hey, what the hell is overroad, sis?" Silence. For engineers froze, coffee cups halfway to their mouths, like he'd just read from a cursed tomb. I was on mute, sitting in the dark, gripping my mug like a crucifix. I knew that name. I'd seen it once on Leon's screen, buried in a terminal window. I'd asked him what it was. He'd smiled and said, "Safety net. For when things get stupid." Turns out we were officially there. LP_route sys wasn't some throwaway namespace or deprecated file. It was the shadow spine of our failover logic. And it was everywhere. Inside it lived custom-built, condition-based triggers, each with its own logic tree, error thresholds, and diagnostic handshake routines. These weren't scripts. They were responses. Quiet, precise watchdogs that monitored our services and decided when the platform was allowed to trust itself. Every trigger was unique. Every exit path tangled. No 2 failure modes were treated the same. It was like Leon had built a dynamic immune system. And now, with him gone, the body was rejecting its transplants. Alec, of course, brushed it off when the engineers tried to escalate. "These legacy wrappers are choking the system," he snapped during the morning sync. "We're not here to worship code. We're here to modernize it." To his credit, he almost sounded like he believed it. But the logs told a very different story. Over the next 48 hours, the DevOps team started isolating the update failures. The culprit? It's been here for years, baked straight into the system. Another alert flashed onto the screen, blinking like a final verdict. "Unauthorized changes detected." Compliance escalation triggered. Clause 17.2b in effect. That's when it hit them. You could almost see it happen, the collective rewind. Partners, managers, every suit in the building mentally replaying years of ignored emails, brushed off policy updates, subject lines like security protocol amendment, urgent, that nobody ever opened. Somewhere deep in legal SharePoint graveyard sat a document, written by Daniel, laying out contingency architecture for post-separation control. Clause 17.2 wasn't a footnote. It was a deadbolt. The clause read, in the event of the named architect's separation from the firm, any critical model or high-risk financial system shall require a certified override from either the architect or the designated legal custodian before future modifications may proceed. And here was the kicker. The override wasn't digital. It was analog, in person. A rotating access code shared only between Daniel and the legal lead, Jill Thomason. Jill, who at that exact moment was doing yoga in the Arizona desert. Which meant that until Monday morning, every high-risk client model, Harborstone included, was locked behind an ethical wall built by a man they fired with zero notice and a $12 tote bag. The partners started murmuring. You mean we can't change it? Wait, who else has the code? Did we give him a non-compete? Did we even read the NDA? And somewhere between one partner swearing under his breath and another Googling Clause 17.2b Alton and Chase leak, the weight of it finally landed. They didn't just fire an analyst. They fired the system's designer. The architect. The one person who understood the skeleton beneath all the glossy decks and empty buzzwords. And he hadn't yelled. Hadn't posted a dramatic LinkedIn thread. Hadn't burned the place down. He just walked out. And taken the keys with him. Someone call him. The CEO growled, sweat finally visible. Call him. Now. Kelsey, silent for the first time in hours, spoke barely above a whisper. He won't answer. Why not? She looked down. Because last week I told him we didn't need his outdated scaffolding anymore. The room went so quiet you could hear the AC kick on. At 2:49 p.m., the Harborstone investor team was escorted into the lobby and offered espresso. At 2:50, the CEO was still standing in front of a locked screen, staring straight into the abyss of one quiet man's foresight. Daniel hadn't sabotaged anything. He just followed the rules he wrote. And they forgot who wrote them. The CEO's assistant, Charlotte, took off across the parking lot in heels designed for lobbies, not emergencies. By the time she spotted Daniel's sedan parked just past the edge of the employee lot, she was sweating through her silk blouse and squinting against the sun bouncing off his windshield. He was sitting in the driver's seat. Calm. Sunglasses on. Black coffee in hand. The window cracked just enough to let the breeze in and the panic stay out. She hurried up, breathless, gripping the edge of the rolled-down window like it was the last solid thing on earth. Daniel, Jesus, hi, she gasped. We need you to come back inside. The model's locked. He took a slow sip of his coffee. I know. They said it needs a post-something. Post-separation compliance key. He said evenly. Clause 17.2b. It's in the documentation. Internal Systems Continuity Binder. Section 3. Tab 9. She blinked. Can you just come in and unlock it? I'm not staff, he said with a small shrug. HR made that very clear. Daniel, the CEO, is asking, no begging, for you to come back. I'm flattered, he said, not sounding flattered at all. But I've got a meeting in 10 minutes. Now it's not. Then came the final blow, delivered with the kind of flat, bored calm only a billionaire could pull off. Maybe you shouldn't have fired your legacy. After that, the call dissolved into stammered numbers and empty pivots. Alec tried to steer things back toward projections and retention initiatives, but it was already over. There was blood in the water. No one cared about his rebrand strategy while clients were reporting timeouts and failed syncs. Everyone could see it now, performance was decaying, the codebase was fighting itself, and the only person who truly understood it was gone. Except he wasn't. Leon resurfaced quietly. No lawsuits. No LinkedIn rants. No victory lap. Just a small footnote buried in a Stratusware press release. We're thrilled to welcome a veteran systems architect to help drive the next-gen backend evolution of our core SaaS infrastructure. No name. No photo. But those of us who knew, we knew. And if there had been any doubt, it disappeared the moment a key client Nexera had chased for 6 months suddenly announced a pivot to Stratusware. Their official reason was technical leadership. I read that line 3 times. It was code. The kind of code Leon would have appreciated. He was rebuilding everything. Cleaner. Smarter. Without the noise. Without the ego. Just logic. Just structure. I heard through a former coworker, now reporting to him, that Leon never even talked about Nexera. Never said Alex's name. Never bragged. He just sat down in a second-hand chair in a modest office, rolled up his sleeves, and started diagramming from scratch. Meanwhile, Alec wore a groove into the carpet. He called emergency strategy syncs and demanded code red flags on any commit with LP prefixes. He told PR to downplay client churn and pushed Ken's statements about temporary data migration bottlenecks. The investors weren't buying it. Neither were we. Because the more Alec talked, the clearer it became. Leon hadn't left chaos behind. He just stopped catching the knives. And now Alec was bleeding on the floor trying to blame the bandage. That night I rewatched the investor call. Frame by frame. Right when Alec says legacy bugs, you can see his eyes flick toward the corner of the screen, like he expects someone, maybe Leon himself, to appear. Leon didn't need to. The silence did the work for him. The kind of silence that only comes after years of doing things the right way, surrounded by people who never noticed. Until now. The email leaked on a Tuesday. Not through some dramatic act of sabotage or a heroic whistleblower moment. Just a forwarded thread. A former Nexera engineer, probably exhausted, probably done watching Alex spin garbage into gold, had replied to a worried client with one honest sentence. Leon Porter wrote 80% of the real-time sync stack. No one else understood it like he did. That was it. No malice. No spin. Just tired truth. And it spread like fire through dry code. Within hours, the client, an enterprise logistics giant with SLA clauses that could bankrupt us if triggered, forwarded the threat straight back to Nexera support. The subject line didn't bother with subtlety. Urgent, escalation path, stability inquiry. And right there, third bullet down. We'd like to speak directly with Mr. Porter. Not Alec. Not your DevOps liaison. Him. Alec didn't handle it well. At first he laughed it off like it was a fluke. They're just nervous. Leon was a crutch. We've got newer systems coming online. Then the notice arrived. Formal. Legal. Dry as dust and 10 times heavier. Intent to suspend platform contract due to degraded service and architectural concerns. They weren't threatening. They were done. And worse than that, they'd CC'd 3 other clients in the same industry vertical. Like it was a chain letter. Or a warning shot. All of a sudden, Alec wasn't just fighting performance bugs anymore. He was fighting credibility rot. Behind the scenes, I heard he started making quiet calls. To board members. To his old mentor. To an executive at Stratusware. Asking if there was any chance Leon might be open to a temporary consult. He never said the word out loud, but we all knew what season was coming next. Begging season. While Alec panicked, Stratusware made their move. No billboards. No trash talk. Just a clean under 2-minute video posted to LinkedIn. A new chapter begins. We're thrilled to welcome an industry veteran architecting our next-generation data architecture platform. Faster. Smarter. Built for resilience from the first line of code. No name. But the architecture diagrams. The flow of the data sync arrows. Anyone with even a half-decent understanding of Nexera's backend could spot the fingerprints instantly. Leon was back. Not here. Not loud. Not vengeful. Just visible again. Clients noticed immediately. 2 more tickets hit Nexera's support portal. Not asking but demanding clarity on who currently maintains the original sync architecture. One client even quoted the leaked email directly, writing, "Is Mr. Porter still affiliated with your engineering team? If not, please confirm where he is currently employed for future consideration." That's when Alec lost it. He called an emergency all hands. Claimed the leak was a breach of internal cohesion. Threatened termination for anyone speaking to clients outside the chain of command. But the louder he got, the smaller he looked. It was like watching a CEO yell at a mirror, hoping it would crack first. We all understood what was really happening. Leon hadn't just built the backbone of the system. He'd built trust. The kind you can't buy, spin, or replace with a trendy tech stack in a rush Jira sprint. And now clients wanted him. Not the brand. Not the logo. Not Alex's slides. Just the guy who made things work. That night, I checked Stratasware's website again. The homepage had changed, subtle like everything Leon touched. Built on trust. Scaled through silence. We know what matters. No name. I didn't need one. Because by then, everyone knew the truth. The quiet guy they tossed aside? He was the platform. Everything else? Just noise. Alec was gone by Monday. No farewell tour. No emoji reactions. Just a short 3-line internal memo from legal and a silent profile deletion. 1 minute he was CTO. The next he was an empty chair and a string of login errors. The board had finally had enough. Of the outages, the excuses, the disappearing clients. The final straw was a $30 million account gone in under 48 hours, citing loss of technical confidence. That one hurt. Nexera's stock dropped 14% before lunch. By the end of the day, it was trending on the forums. Nexera's silent collapse. How one layoff triggered a sink storm. Inside the office, morale cratered. Engineers whispered in corners. Support teams braced for the next wave of churn. Marketing quietly canceled webinars. There was no spinning it anymore. Everyone knew the ghost in the machine was gone, and the whole structure was cracking like ice in spring. And so, inevitably, they turned to Leon. The same man Alec had dismissed. The same man they'd talked over in meetings. The same man they denied documentation time and cut loose without ceremony. Now they wanted him back. Not with an apology, of course. They weren't that evolved. This was different. It was strategic. Calculated. They dressed it up as a senior technical advisor role, wrapped it in every corporate courtesy they could think of: remote flexibility, full autonomy, a generous package with equity vesting, to reflect his legacy contributions. The subject line said it all. A new chapter together? Leon didn't respond. He didn't even pause. Because at that exact moment, he was on a Zoom call, camera off, voice steady, finalizing onboarding for the same client Nexera had just lost. The deal was clean, efficient. The CTO on the other end smiled like a man who'd survived a storm and just met the architect of the lighthouse. Leon answered questions before they were asked, explained without talking down, walked through his new stack the way someone sketches a quiet cathedral. Nothing flashy, everything intentional. When the client gently asked if he had any thoughts on Nexera's collapse, Leon didn't smirk, didn't take the bait. He just said, "Systems reflect their leadership. Ours will be different." That was it. When the call ended, he muted the mic, leaned back, and looked at his inbox. There it was again. A new chapter together? He opened it. Read it once. Then again. Then he highlighted the entire thing and hit delete. No reply. No thank you. No closing shot. Just an empty inbox, a quiet office, and a cup of cold coffee sweating beside a draft of his new systems manual. Outside the window, Stratasware's small parking lot sat half full. Nothing flashy. No Teslas. Just beat-up sedans and one guy in a hoodie eating lunch on a bench. The kind of place that didn't need to shout to be powerful. Leon smiled to himself. He didn't need revenge. He had relevance. He didn't need to go back. He'd already arrived. The next investor meeting was quiet in a way I'd never heard before. No banter. No smug confidence. Not even the nervous clatter of keyboards pretending to take notes. Just that thick, uncomfortable silence that settles in when everyone realizes the truth a little too late. Halfway through the meeting, right after a desperate slide about restored confidence metrics, and an almost comical pivot toward AI automation as our new growth focus, it happened. A junior analyst from Farbridge Partners, the kind who usually just nods and listens, looked up, cleared her throat, and said softly, "Maybe someone did notice when he left." The room didn't move. No laughs. No pushback. No one dared. We all knew who she meant. No name required. No drama. Just the sentence hanging there like smoke after a fire. The kind that seeps into your clothes and your memory and never really comes out. There wasn't much to say after that. The board drifted past the point of pretending. Even the CEO, now rebranded as acting product lead, couldn't fake his usual energy. Someone tried to steer the conversation toward Q4 salvage strategies, but it felt like handing out mops on the Titanic. Outside the meeting room, the article was already spreading. Not through PR. Not from any official channel. Just shared, reposted, relinked until it was everywhere. The Quiet Architect. How one layoff sparked a platform exodus. No photo. No pull quotes. Just a calm, methodical breakdown of Nexra's infrastructure collapse, the cascading sync failures, the client migration to Stratusware, and the man whose systems once made the impossible feel routine. They never said his name. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. I saw it in group chats, in LinkedIn comments, in the way engineers at rival firms tagged each other under the story with a single word. Respect. Leon never responded publicly. No press tour. No think piece. No victory thread. He didn't need headlines to validate him. He'd already written his legacy in uptime logs and code nobody could keep running without him. The kind of legacy that doesn't need applause. It just gets remembered. And that's the thing. They said no one would notice when he left. Everyone did.